Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Love 101. It is family time. We are on Facebook and we're also live on YouTube. Now, family time is about your issues and your relationships, whether it is your family abroad or abroad or within your community. Family Time is produced by the Family Life Ministries, and our aim is to enable healthy families, which will lead to a healthy nation. So, stay tuned with us and please connect with us on all our social media platforms. Friend us on Facebook at FLM-Family Life Ministries. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Family Life Ministries FLMJA and keep up with all that's happening on Instagram at Simply FLMJA. I am your host, Tamika Scott Walters, and today we will be discussing Parkinson disease. What is Parkinson disease? Now, in this part one of our two-part series, we will discuss what are the signs of Parkinson disease, how it is diagnosed, and all the myths that linger. So you will be able to tell what's fact from what is fiction. Now, if you have family members, friend, a neighbor, any colleague, or even yourself who may be experiencing symptoms like tremors, slow movement, stiffness of joint, it could be Parkinson. But don't jump to conclusions just yet. Stay with us if you want to know more. So, today's topic is Parkinson's disease, hope, and the future. So, while you call a friend, tell a friend, let them know it's time for family time, we want you to think about today's question so that you can participate and share with us. Now, today's one, it's easy. It's a true or false. Those are my favorite types of question. So, true or false? Parkinson's disease is fatal. Today's question, true or false? Parkinson's disease is fatal. Be sure to send us your answers via WhatsApp text or voice notes, and you can send to 876 997 3125. Remember to keep your voice notes 30 seconds or less. You can also give us a call at our studio lines at 876 968 8327 or 876 968 8328 to participate. You can also watch us and comment live on our social media platforms as we are live on Love 101's Facebook and YouTube page. We will be right back with our very special guest today, who is Dr. Denise Miller, where we'll be talking about Parkinson's disease, hope, and the future. We'll be back soon.
On the next Campus Connection, we will be looking at Staying the Course Part 2. In the context of education, staying the course generally refers to maintaining a consistent and effective educational approach, curriculum, or teaching method, even in the face of challenges or changes. Join us with guests Miss Kadian Gentles, Mr. Vivian Howard, and Mr. Paul Park as they share about their teaching journey. And don't miss our honor roll segment with Miss Princess Ford, founder of the Whistle Alert Jamaica initiative. Campus Connection is brought to you by Heart NSTA Trust. Skill is power. That's Campus Connection, Tuesday, April 8th at 5:30 p.m. only on the family station, Love 101.
Welcome back to Family Time on Love 101. And welcome to our very special guest today, Dr. Denise Miller, nurse practitioner, neurosurgery at Penn Medicine, New Jersey. How are you today, Dr. Miller?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
That's what we love to hear. You are doing great. You are very welcome. And guess what? We are happy and delighted to have you here with us today. Now, to all our listeners, please remember today's feedback question. True or false? Parkinson disease is fatal. Remember to WhatsApp and text to 876-997-3125. Try to keep those voice notes 30 seconds or less. And you can also give us a call at our studio lines at 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328. Also, watch and comment live on Love 101's Facebook or YouTube page. So, let's jump right in. Parkinson's disease has been known to us for over 200 years, yet it is frequently misunderstood. It presently affects more than 10 million persons globally. That's right, you heard 10 million. And right here within our beautiful island of Jamaica, the Caribbean, many persons are still living without enough support and also without awareness. There are countless persons who still don't fully understand what it is. And so we will be discussing Parkinson disease today so that we can bring greater awareness as we talk about treatments or the future. And so we will start with the basics. Doc, we want to hear a little bit about the history of Parkinson's disease. So we know it was um, perhaps discovered or named over 200 years ago. Um, how did it become globally recognized in medicine?
Yeah, so yes, Tamika, the Parkinson's disease is a chronic neurologic condition named after Dr. James Parkinson, who first described the syndrome in 1817. While Parkinson's work was groundbreaking, it wasn't until the 1870s that a French neurologist, Jean Martin Charcot formally named the condition, and that just as you said, Parkinson's disease is the second most common neurodegenerative disease and has global prevalence of greater than 10 million individuals worldwide. So when we talk
Okay,
about
thank you. Go ahead, Doc. Go ahead. You are
So
elaborating.
right. So when we talk about what that means to have a chronic neurologic condition, Parkinson's disease is a slowly progressive disease which causes a gradual loss of nerve cells in the brain that produce the neurotransmitter dopamine. Because dopamine carries signals to the part of the brain that control movement and coordination, decreased dopamine levels lead to those cardinal motor symptoms that we see in Parkinson's disease. Classically, as you had alluded to, that tremor, which in Parkinson's disease is classically a rest tremor. When patients are sitting completely still, you see that shaking and tremor compared to another diagnosis, essential tremor, that is classically seen with an action tremor where they're drinking, eating, in motion, you see that tremor, that generalized slowness, stiffness of limbs, rigidity, things like that. It also presents with some non motor symptoms, which I'm not sure if you'd like me to talk about at this time or not.
We are going to get right into it because I think the most popular symptom that persons are aware of is the tremors, but
Mhm.
perhaps we are not able to distinguish whether it's a particular type of tremor, as you mentioned, whether it has to do with substance such as alcohol or otherwise. So I would love for you to explain further about that. And also, Doc, I know it was discovered by a neurologist,
Mhm.
and I know so many of us, I for one sometimes get all the doctors and their titles confused. So when we hear neurology, does that primarily mean that Parkinson's is a condition that affects the brain as opposed to another organ?
Correct. This is all happening in the brain, and that the study of neurology, being the nerve and brain system, the neurologist is physician trained that would do kind of medical management, where our department, neurosurgery, is that same counterpart trained as a surgeon. So we would offer procedures and treatments surgically to treat those diagnoses that our neurology colleagues have been managing with medications.
Okay, Doc. Elaborate for us now, and let us know, distinguish, as you mentioned, the tremors and perhaps any other symptoms that may be associated with Parkinson.
Right. So thank you. The some other motor symptoms that you can see is that the handwriting gets quite small. There could be decreased facial expression. We call that masking, where you're not kind of blinking as much when you're smiling. You're not really moving your face very much. Very soft speech, difficulty swallowing. As the disease progresses, you can have that kind of posture instability. Patients could be leaning forward, um, and that ultimately their walking ends up being more like shuffling. They're not picking their feet up and just slow. And then that increases with those changes in gait and walking, then increases the risk for falls and further injury as a result of a fall. Very late stages, thinking about these motor symptoms, patients can actually get stuck and frozen where they feel like their feet are actually stuck to the floor. And then that causes them to either fall forwards or backwards. And they can also be kind of picking their feet up in small steps, but actually not moving anywhere. We call those festinations. And sometimes, because we talked about the dopamine neurotransmitter, which is decreased, and that ultimately, when we get into treatment, it's really kind of replacing and giving your body that dopamine to help with those symptoms. But we've also found that other neurotransmitters can be affected in Parkinson's. And then that can lead to some of those non motor symptoms of tiredness, fatigue, some lightheadedness, changes in blood pressure when they stand up, almost feeling like they're going to pass out, constipation. The gut is very important when we talk about management and treatment for Parkinson's. And then there's thinking and memory changes. About 30% of Parkinson's patients develop dementia. There's also an anxiety and depression component and sleep disturbances. Now, not
Doc, the symptoms are crucial. The symptoms are a lot. Some we associate with Parkinson disease. The tremor,
mhm,
I know for one, is
yep.
popular, but so many of the others, sometimes we think they could be associated with possibly anything, especially the secondary symptoms you mentioned, which are also associated with it when it comes to fatigue and tiredness and all those.
Mhm.
But I really want our listeners, you've heard the numerous symptoms that the doctor has mentioned. And so we want to get back to our feedback question for today. When you think about it all, true or false, is Parkinson disease fatal? We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And so we invite you to send your responses to us via WhatsApp, text, or voice note. And you can send to 876-997-3125. We want you to keep your voice notes 30 seconds or less. You can also give us a call on our studio lines at 876-968-8327, or 876-968-8328. Remember to watch us on our Facebook page and also on YouTube. And just so you know, the numbers for the Family Life Ministries head office in Kingston are 876-920-1034 or 876-926-8101. Stick around, you will hear more from Dr. Denise Miller. We'll be back soon.
Into savings with incredible deals from Home and Things. Whether you're upgrading your home or refreshing a room, don't miss these unbeatable deals now in full bloom for the best in tiles, bathroom fixtures and faucets, windows, doors, vanities, lighting, and more. Home and Things is budding with discounts. So shop now, Old Hope Road and Constant Spring Road. Spring into savings and take home the deals from Home and Things. The world is changing and so should you. Diversify your career and gain local and international certification in 2 to 6 months at Distinction College. Start online and face-to-face class in medical assistant, medical lab tech, pediatrics, and psychiatric nursing, ECG tech, home attendant, hairdressing, makeup, meal tech, call center, supervisory and events planning management, cashiering, media broadcasting, and travel tourism. Register this week and get free subjects and free courses. No subjects required, no age limits. Visit us in Kingston, Spanish Town, Outaris, and St. Elizabeth. Call us at 876-356-4167.
Looking at the light, we've been here for 25 years and we are
Guardian Life.
just getting started. Leading the way every day, protecting you and yours at every stage.
Guardian Life.
Looking at the light, caring for family, caring for you. Looking at the life is what we do.
For every generation, for every stage. Your partner for 25 years. Guardian Life.
Looking at the light.
It's brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
JUTC finally arrived in St. Mary. Well done, JUTC. The seats are very comfortable and it has Wi-Fi and AC.
Yeah, but the ride was nice. The AC was nice. I love the ride. I will always look out for you.
Thank you for traveling with me, and I will definitely look out for you the next time. Welcome to JTC on the 52B from Alpha Tree to Tom's River.
Ready to experience 6 times more freshness in your clothes? Try Downy Scent Beats. Its fragrance is so amazing, you'll have to sniff it to believe it. Try Downy Scent Beats today. 6 times more freshness versus using detergent alone.
Welcome back. We are talking today about Parkinson's disease, hope, and the future. You are tuned to Family Time on Love 101 FM. Our guest today is Dr. Denise Miller, nurse practitioner, neurosurgery at Penn Medicine, New Jersey, in the United States. Now, diagnosing Parkinson's disease can be very complicated. If you were listening earlier, you would have listened the numerous side effects, the numerous signs that Dr. Miller mentioned. Now, especially in the earlier set of the disease, the symptoms could be subtle or they could simply be mistaken for something else. So let's talk more about what that process is really like. Doc,
Thank you. So,
you mentioned all the symptoms, those that may start at the onset.
right. So, also,
So
I
sorry,
don't.
Doc. I do think there is a lag between our connections. Go ahead,
I do
Doc. Go
think,
ahead and
yeah,
elaborate about this.
yeah. So we were also kind of mentioning kind of when do we see this presenting? It often presents, you know, around 60 or in the 6th decade, but it could appear much earlier. 5 to 10% of patients are diagnosed under the age of 40. But the risk of developing Parkinson's disease increases with age, and men are more likely to develop Parkinson's than women. There are, when we think about causes, there in some cases, Parkinson's can be inherited, which means runs in families. There is some gene mutations that we test for that have been identified to increase the risk of developing Parkinson's. However, most cases of Parkinson's, it's not one single gene, but multiple genes that play a role. There's also been some evidence and research to suggest exposure to certain toxins, such as pesticides and herbicides, has also been linked to an increase in Parkinson's. And so thinking about those as well as kind of who might develop these symptoms. But once you notice or things that family members, friends, community could mention or watch out for is that tremor when you're sitting, watching television, resting. And many a times it is very subtle. It'll start off as a twitch or tremor of just the single finger, many a times the little finger. And many a times the patient doesn't even notice it. It's other people who are observing their movements that comment on that. And also thinking, which I didn't mention earlier, but when we walk, our arms kind of swing at a pace. This disease shows that there's a decrease in that arm swing. And that is often very noticeable to others who are observing people. I've had patients present to our office, and one of the questions I ask at every consult is, what was the very first symptom that you noticed of Parkinson's that got you diagnosed? And many a times patients say, I didn't notice it. It was a friend, a coworker, someone else who brought that to their attention. And those generalized slowness of movements, you notice that things just take longer. And that there's also 70% of patients have a loss of sense of smell until they get diagnosed. It's about 90% of patients. So thinking about, because it can present as so many different things, that because we don't have a single test, that it's usually a diagnosis by exam. And so in the office, we have something called the finger tapping test, where we would ask people to tap their finger, and we want it to be big and wide. And so what you see is that people, it's very small, slower, or they can't keep kind of like a rhythm. And so that's kind of what we're looking for in that slowness of movement. And you can see that through toe tapping, stomping of the feet, kind of going through multiple things that we put together in that exam. But also ultimately, there is an imaging test called a DAT scan, which is done in nuclear medicine, which ultimately looks at the dopamine transportation, where the protein's responsible for recycling dopamine. And if there's a loss of the dopamine neurons, then that would be reduced DAT activity. And that could be kind of interpreted that ultimately that it would be suggestive of Parkinson's. Having a normal scan doesn't mean that you couldn't potentially develop Parkinson's down the road.
Okay. All right. So Doc, with that being said, having learned so much about all the science, learning that most persons are affected later in life as they age, such as 60 and onwards. Also, more males are affected than female, and even the subtle signs such as moveness, stiffness of joint, how one hands may move when they walk, how the eye may blink or the face may be free to show expressions. When we recognize those symptoms, what would be the next step? Because we know that it is the specialty of a neurologist. Do we then reach out to our general doctor? What would be the next step you recommend persons who may identify these signs in a loved one? What's the next step for them?
Great question. So, yes, we would recommend evaluation by either the primary care or general physician or neurologist. And that because Parkinson's disease is initially treated with medications, the initial medication that's prescribed is that carbidopa levodopa because we're replacing dopamine in the body. And then kind of thinking about the administration of medications, and that ultimately over time as the disease progresses, patients often need to take more of the medication more often throughout the day, or add additional medications on. And so when we talk about Parkinson's disease and that the lack of that dopamine, and if we replace it, your dopamine level comes up, then there's these fluctuations that happen throughout the day where patients report that they're on their medications, they've taken it, started to work, and they see a decrease in those Parkinson's symptoms, but then it wears off and they have to take their medicine again, and they have these ebbs and flows throughout the day. That's what we call that on and off. And we actually can do a test. Um, um, Doing an exam with a patient presenting to the office completely off those medicines, give them their medication, wait 30 to 60 minutes for it to take effect, repeat that, and we can see exactly what changes in response to that medication. And that helps to determine kind of the next step of what maybe surgery and other alternatives would adjunct to that, with the fact that there is not a cure um, for Parkinson's. It's really talking about lifelong management of this disease and how to maximize their everyday activities and helping them to stay active and healthy is where that goes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. You mentioned those tests that are done in office, perhaps to determine the response to medication or to determine the stage. Since there is no initial test for Parkinson's disease, and perhaps there has to be some observation over time, is Parkinson's a disease that has a high percentage of misdiagnosis?
I think that it not misdiagnosis, but I think that there's a delay to diagnosis at times because the symptoms are sometimes very subtle, and depending on how they present at the visit, because it is partly observation, that I feel that there is definitely this disparity to getting diagnosed. And I think some of that is particularly access to care, like you had mentioned maybe where patients are residing and what specialties and care is available, so that for patients and family members to know what to look for, what to watch for, and then to seek out that evaluation and maybe make sure they know that they're reporting certain things that they've been observing that they may not be seeing in that little snippet of time that's their evaluation and the office.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doc. Listeners, you are hearing the information from the specialists right to your ears. This is Family Time. We are live on Love 101. We're on Facebook. We are on YouTube. And our question for today is true or false? Parkinson disease is fatal. We want to hear your responses. Please participate. You can call our studio lines at 876-968-8327 to 8, or you can send WhatsApp, text, or voice notes to 876-997-3125. We want to hear from you, but it's time for a break. We'll be back soon.
Amitana and human trafficking is everybody's business. Call 1-888-PROTECT to report suspected cases of child trafficking.
The time by the Ministry of National Security is
It is 6 p.m. Jamaican
Imagine you're
time.
ready for a long day and it smells so amazing that it makes you smile. Try Febreze Buds, an air freshener that delivers continuous scent for up to 50 days when you plug it in low mode. Indulge in wonderful scents for weeks with Febreze.
Get the skills and certification that equates to jobs and money worldwide. In 3 to 4 months at the Distinction College, start day, evening, and Saturday classes in pharmacy technician, bartending and mixology, project and HR management, cosmetology, airline ticketing, and sales. No subjects required, no age limits, no entrance tests. Register this week and win an additional course for free. Or visit us in Kingston, Spanish Town, and Ocho Rios, or call us at 876-356-4167. Distinction College, the school of champions.
Welcome back, and let's go right to Rev Mike with this week's episode of WTF Word to Flesh Moment.
Parkinson's disease affects the body's motor systems, and some people with PD also develop dementia during the course of their disease. Parkinson's can't be cured. Medicines may help, and in some cases, surgery may help lessen symptoms. However, in most cases, a caregiver has to step in and help with the daily routine of the one experiencing Parkinson's. If you're experiencing early onset Parkinson's disease symptoms, or if you have been battling with the disease for some time now, but you're still able to hear and understand this message, may I encourage you. Is anyone among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the church and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith will save the sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And if he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. James chapter 5. This is the testimony of God's word as he has helped someone like you many years ago. Keep hope alive that what God has done for others, he will do for you too. If you happen to be a caregiver of a Parkinson's disease patient, may I remind you of Galatians 6:9? Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. May our God and Father reward you physically and spiritually as you remain faithful in your service and love. I'm Reverend Mike from Fellowship Tabernacle, and we just had a WTF moment.
All right. Thank you, Rev Mike, with your Word to Flesh moment. You are still tuned to Love 101, and you're listening to your favorite program. It is Family Time, brought to you by the Family Life Ministries. Family Life Ministries provides counseling for people with all kinds of challenges from all walks of life. And our show this evening is on Parkinson disease, hope, and the future. Our special guest is Dr. Denise Miller, nurse practitioner, neurosurgery at Penn Medicine, New Jersey, in the United States. Now, we would have heard so far there is no cure for Parkinson's disease just yet, but there are many ways that the disease can be treated and managed. It has been discovered over 200 years ago, and we have come a mighty long way. So let's continue to explore the tools that may be available and the research that can give us hope. Dr. Miller, before the break, you mentioned perhaps there is not such a high rate of misdiagnosis, but a delay in getting one diagnosed? Because again, the variety, the symptoms, it could, once it presents itself, it could really be a number of other sicknesses or disease. I want you to explain to us. You've told us what the signs are that we can look for. You've explained how it progresses. What about treatments that can help one to manage since there is no cure? Where are we with that today?
So, as I mentioned earlier, that primary modality of treatment is the administration of medications, that carbidopa, levodopa, or dopamine replacement. One other thing I wanted to mention is that not a Parkinson's symptom, but a side effect from medications can be something that we call dyskinesia. That is a involuntary, uncontrolled movement that interferes with daily activities. If anyone has ever seen Michael J. Fox on TV or giving a presentation, those movements that he's unable to control himself, he's just in the spotlight and is someone who we can kind of direct people to seeing that that is what that side effect to medication looks like. And sometimes once that presents, it becomes challenging to manage those symptoms of Parkinson's with medication because you're now getting that side effect. And that's when we would maybe be thinking more of a surgery or treatment option. But the number one thing that patients can do to help them slow down the progression of Parkinson's is daily exercise that results in being sweaty. That we have shown in research to slow down the progression of Parkinson's overall. And there is a lot of research being done about the intestinal tract and what we call as gut health and its interactions with medication administration and absorption. So the carbidopa, levodopa, dopamine replacement medications are best absorbed on an empty stomach. And many a times that affects patients' ability to time out eating with the medication to get the best result, that can result in that they're not eating enough. And some of these patients are losing weight that affects their overall health as well, for something else to think about. So when we think about those treatment options and kind of those surgery options, gold standard being deep brain stimulation, which is the placement of leads in the brain that then get tunneled under the skin to a battery on the chest that would be able to give the energy to treat those symptoms directly, that would kind of replace what the dopamine medication is doing, kind of like a pacemaker does for the heart, but that energy would be going to the brain to treat Parkinson's symptoms. So originally, patients. Oh, Tamika, I think you're muted.
So sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. I wasn't aware of that treatment option that you just mentioned. But I wanted to ask, when you mentioned the actor, which many of us, well, some of us would be familiar with, and when there is the side effect of sporadic or involuntary movement, I want to ask, does that mean that the Parkinson disease is at its end stage? Because I know it progresses. Does that mean it's at its end stage, or it's just
No, it just is a side effect to the medications, and that
a
can happen
response
at
to the medication?
and that can be at different times for different patients. Some patients take a low dose of that medicine and get that side effect, and other patients can take a very high dose of that medication and then see a side effect. And some other patients never develop that side effect of those abnormal movements. But once that presents, then many providers often are then thinking adding surgery, an option to adjunct to medications that would maybe decrease the need for the medication so that they would have a better quality of life, less of that abnormal movements, because those abnormal movements could affect their walking and balance as well if everything's shaking and moving uncontrollably. Um, and so, where originally our neurology colleagues who've managing most of these patients long term really did think of deep brain stimulation as an last effort that we would then refer patients to our team to consider this therapy. And that mindset has really changed, that we're really thinking about those first few years. And depending on how the disease is progressing and what is going on, kind of talking up front about this being a lifelong disease, and that when and where would we think of making that referral to our team to discuss something like that. And that really we've now found that sooner is much better, because if you can get this improvement in that, what we call that on time, where those medicines are working more consistently and you have less of those ups and downs, patients just feel better more, much more of every day, so that then they can be active, engage with their families, and that ultimately, circling back to that sweaty exercise and staying active being like the one thing that we know that will slow down the progression of Parkinson's. That's our goal for all of our patients, is to improve their quality of life and make it that they can enjoy their time with their family and be more active safely and prevent other injuries such as falls, things like that.
All right, Dr. Miller, thank you so much. Has the research indicated that there is a preferred treatment or there is a better result as opposed to oral medications or surgery? Do the results favor one versus the other?
No, they're usually kind of go hand in hand, so that even if the deep brain stimulation surgery allows for decreasing some of the medications, because it is a disease process that lacks the dopamine receptor and that these symptoms are coming from that, the most important thing is to make sure that they usually still need to take some medications along with that therapy. And there are some other therapy options like focused ultrasound, and there's now a pump that would deliver medication that directly into the intestine rather than taking a pill, because there's so much research regarding the absorption within the gut that is now also an option for patients.
Okay, so I have another question, Doc. With the combination of surgery or medication, are we at the stage where we can possibly stop it from progressing? So whatever stage one is in the disease, they stay at that stage? Or is it regardless of treatment, it could be delayed, but will it still progress?
So yes, so normally that's the nature of the disease, is that it continues to progress over time. So when you think about the younger patients who are being diagnosed in their 40s and 50s, those are some of the patients that we really do advocate for deep brain stimulation, so that then they can potentially become more active, exercise, things like that. So there is the time where, if somebody chooses for focused ultrasound, which is using sound waves to create a lesion in the brain to mimic the same stimulation that comes from deep brain stimulation, that potentially, and that's often looked at for patients who have disease just on one side of the body, like hemi Parkinson's, but that ultimately they all kind of go hand in hand with medications. We would never stop medications.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. Listeners, we are heading into our final break. You are tuned to Family Time. We are live on Love 101. We are on your Facebook page and YouTube also. Family Time is produced by the Family Life Ministries. And our feedback question for today: true or false? Parkinson disease is fatal. We want you to send us your responses via WhatsApp, text, or voice note to 876-997-3125 or give us a call in studio at 876-968-8327 or 8328. Remember to watch and comment live on our Facebook and YouTube page. We want to hear from you. Now, did you know that Family Life Ministries have 2 books available on shelf that would be very good for you today? You didn't know? Well, their titles are Answers to Questions Parents Ask and Questions on Love, Sex, and Marriage. You can purchase them from Bryan Bookstore or the Jamaica Baptist Union Bookstore or Source of Light Bookstore. Now, there is also a third book, and it is titled Before They Say I Do, the questionnaire and manual. Now, this one is specifically for counselors, psychologists, pastors, and marriage officers. And all 3 books are also available through Family Life Ministries. You can give them a call at 876-920-1034 or 876-926-8101. We're out for a break, but we'll be back soon.
You can see the face, but not the heart. So many times.
Bless up. This is Christopher Martin. Human trafficking is a crime. Let's unite to end human trafficking. Be wise, open your eyes, spot them, stop them, and report them.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
Shadow at the dark. No shadow at the dark.
Jamaica and its workforce are advancing quickly. Life-changing opportunities are arising. You need training and support. We are the Renewed Heart NSTA Trust, committed to providing new and emerging skills training and opportunities. Come to Heart. We'll help you claim your place in the workforce of the future.
Ready to experience 6 times more freshness in your clothes? Try Downy Scent Beads. Its fragrance is so amazing, you'll have to sniff it to believe it. Try Downy Scent Beads today. 6 times more freshness versus using detergent alone.
Welcome back. It is now 6:19 p.m. on Love 101. And guess what? You are tuned to Family Time, which is brought to you by the Family Life Ministries. Remember, Family Life Ministries provides counseling for people with all kinds of challenges from all walks of life. And remember, you can connect with us on any of our social media platform. If you're just joining us, today we are discussing Parkinson disease, hope and the future. And our special guest today is Dr. Denise Miller, nurse practitioner, neurosurgery at Penn Medicine in New Jersey, the United States. Now, Parkinson's disease is a lifelong condition, but today people are living longer and more fulfilling lives than ever before. So, what comes after the diagnosis? The daily reality, the care, and of course, where we are involved, the community. So, Dr. Miller, before the break, I made note that 2 of the very important steps in the disease, or as we try to either prevent its progression, has to do with daily exercise where we get sweaty. I'll tell you, Doc, I think I'm allergic to exercise. I haven't been diagnosed by a doctor, but I do think I'm allergic to exercise and I don't like to get sweaty. But after hearing what you said today, I'm reconsidering. And the next one is our intestinal tract or gut health. So, word of caution to those who are hearing, we are going to put that 2025 list to make sure that we get our exercise in and we pay greater care to our gut health. Now, Doc, we are in the year 2025. There is a greater consciousness of mental health. And I know that a disease, whether someone has the disease or their caregiver or family, it can be particularly difficult. How does someone who is either suffering with the disease or caring for someone with it, how can they help the mental state of either themselves as caregiver or the patients so as not to give the body additional stress to cause a greater progression?
Tamika, excellent question. We do worry about caregiver fatigue. So, right, the person who's caring for the patient with Parkinson's disease. And we often want to make sure that you don't just have one patient you're taking care of, right? You're taking care of your patient and their support team, whoever that is. And that can be from the community, friends, family. And so, thinking about what they can do for themselves, it's some of those very basics, staying hydrated, making sure they're eating, making sure that sleep is something that I talked about sleep disturbances in a Parkinson's patient, but that ultimately how important sleep is overall for all of us. That would be very important for the caregiver and support team. There is also a lot of resources available for support groups for not just patients, but the caregivers. And there's the out of the COVID pandemic, there's more that's available online through video chats and other resources that I feel that's one positive thing that came out of the pandemic is that there's more resources that are available to more patients through the virtual options versus in person, because there might not be one in your community, but this allows us to connect kind of wherever we are around the world. That ultimately is very important to talk about kind of how people are feeling, struggles that they're going through, that and sometimes there's times where you actually need respite care, and that there's patients who have more advanced Parkinson's who are being cared for at home that temporarily get placed in assisted living or another care facility level to allow for the caregiver to kind of get a break and kind of, regroup themselves, because there is definitely a caregiver fatigue that is seen. And so making sure that you have someone that you're talking to, whether that's your community, within the church, a therapist,
Yeah.
that all of those things are so important.
Dr. Yeah, thank you so much. If you are listening and you're thinking about a caregiver who may be dealing with someone who has Parkinson, we know the disease progresses, and so it's something that will continue to worsen over time. In part 2 of our program next week, you will want to let them know to join, because then we will be having a greater focus on our caregivers, their families, and hope for them. Um, Dr. Miller, I wanted to ask, if someone has received a recent diagnosis of Parkinson disease, what would you say to them in this moment of the newness of it, just knowing that it will progress and all the uncertainties that will unfold? What would be your word of advice to them just now?
Tamika, are you able to hear me?
So sorry, Dr. Miller. I believe there was a technical glitch just now. I wanted to ask if there is someone who has received a recent diagnosis, what would you say to them in this moment, provided the questions that loom and the uncertainty for the future? What would be your advice to them?
That the diagnosis of Parkinson's that carries any neurodegenerative disease process, so that you know that's going to get kind of worse over time. That's technically what that word, definition means, but that we have hope. We have new medications coming out that for treatment. We have new technologies that are coming out. We now have the pump. We have focused ultrasound, which got FDA approval just in the last 2 years. Deep brain stimulation's been around for over 30 years. And there's many clinical trials, global clinical trials, not just in the United States, that is offering hope. We have um, genes to test for. We're doing a lot of research on the gut health and looking at probiotics and other connections that seem to be very positive on treatments and improvement of Parkinson's, looking at some very simple measures. And so I just really do want to make sure that everybody is hearing there is a lot of hope. The key is watching for these symptoms. If you're seeing any of them, talk with the person who's displaying them and have them seen. Because the sooner that you're seen, the sooner we can get you treatment and talk about, maximizing that movements, because everything does slow down, get stiff over time. That does affect your walking and put you more at risk for further injury. And we really want to kind of advocate for early intervention every time we can.
Miller, and I know we are at the end of our program. I know for the benefit of all our listeners and for anyone who would have joined late, I'm going to ask again for you to go over the various symptoms that we should look for so that we are aware and persons can seek medical help to confirm if there is a diagnosis for Parkinson's disease.
Yes, so those cardinal classic symptoms that go with Parkinson's is that rest tremor, laying still, sitting still, having tremor, could be of the arms, legs, and then also slowness of movement, kind of thinking about whether or not you can kind of do certain things, and stiffness of joints, kind of where things aren't smooth, they kind of rigid. And then there's other symptoms that other people could pick up on, is that decreased facial movement, almost like no blinking, that decreased arm swing while you're walking, kind of thinking about how they're just normally walking and their gait looks, and being like, wow, that's different from before, and commenting on that and kind of bringing it to the forefront to have a discussion about. Those would be what we would really recommend for people to watch out for, and then to seek treatment and evaluation. It could be something else, but it doesn't hurt to have it evaluated to find out early.
Dr. Miller, thank you so much. Thank you for being here with us today and for keeping us informed on Parkinson's disease. To all our listeners, now we are aware. We will pay closer attention to see if we can identify these and ensure that our loved ones or anyone seek help. Now, if you have questions of a personal nature or you are concerned about a family member or a friend, remember to give Family Life Ministries a call. You can contact us at our head office at 876-920-1034 or 876-926-8101. Remember, for appointments, you can contact the office to ensure that you have information on available times and for costing. Also, Otherwise, to keep up with all that's happening with the Family Life Ministries and our respective programs, check us out on our Facebook page, Family Life Ministries. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Family Life Ministries FLMJA, and follow us on Instagram at simply FLMJA. Now, before you leave this evening, the scripture comes to us from Romans 15, verse 13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of always. Thanks again to our special guest, Dr. Denise Miller. Thanks also to our show producer, Kathy Gale, Darrell Graham, for piloting us through this. I'm host Tamika Scott Walters. It was my pleasure. See you soon.